Chapter 17 is entitled A Conceptual Framework for Person-Centered Practice with Older People. It's by McCormick, written in 2003. And this writing explores the issue of what a person-centered practice is and explores the meaning of autonomy for older patients, particularly in the hospital setting. So before we get on to the study, the notion of a person-centered care is rooted in mutual respect, and that respect is based on a person's values, beliefs, and care choices. And when those things are respected, it is called patient-centered care. And patient-centered care has been linked positively with autonomy and the development of an authentic consciousness, which we'll define in a little bit. Back to the study. The author conducted a hermeneutic study which consisted of a convenience sample from 4 different hospitals, which yielded 14 case studies of nurse-patient interactions that occurred over about a 1-year period. And they utilized the technique of conversational analysis, and through interpretive data processes actually revealed 23 principles of action which can contribute to a person-centered practice. And those are in your Cody book on page 199. So, what's an authentic consciousness, and how can it contribute to patient-centered care? Well, an authentic consciousness is when we consider the person's life as a whole in order to sustain meaning and maximize growth and development. And we do that by taking in another's values, beliefs, and experiences. The authors call this when we take an integrated biography of someone. It involves the adoption of imperfect duties and consideration of the contextual factors that can influence the performing of those duties. So, we all have duties in regard to patient care. And perfect duties are those things that we do that are strict and enforceable. Imperfect duties are ones that cannot be forced. And several of our imperfect duties can be like showing compassion, care, and concern toward our patients. Nobody can force us to do that. You either do it or you don't. And both perfect duties and imperfect duties come into play when we consider ethical decision-making on the part of the nurse. And the nurse's ability to perform ethical decision-making can be affected not only by the emotions that are inherent in the situation, but competing duties and distractions that are all around the healthcare environment. Okay? So on page 191 in your Cody text, it talks about 5 imperfect duties that are considered to be important to the development of autonomy, and also they contribute to authentic consciousness. So they are informed flexibility, which is the facilitation of decision making through information sharing and the integration of new information into care practices. Mutuality is the recognition of others' values as being equally important in decision making. Transparency, making explicit the intentions and motivations for action and the boundaries within which care decisions are set. And negotiation, patient participation through a culture of care that values the views of the patient as legitimate. Sympathetic presence, an engagement that recognizes the uniqueness and value of the individual by approximately responding to cues that maximize coping resources. There's a little bit more, but you get the basic gist. So, how can nurses foster authentic consciousness in their patients? Well, we can foster it by using those 5 imperfect duties that I just read to you out of the book. Okay? We can use those as guiding principles when adopting a patient-centered approach to care. And when we adopt a patient-centered approach to care, we have to consider several things. We have to consider the nurse values and expertise. We have to consider the patient values and what the patients feel that are important. And we also have to consider the context in which care is received, because many factors can impact patient-centered care. Organizational systems and their constraints, things like staffing patterns or power differentials going on in the healthcare system. Another way that we can facilitate authentic consciousness is to acknowledge and value the patient's personal biography and health experience. We've got to get to know our patients. And the book cautions against just sitting at the tip of the iceberg and not ever connecting with the patients. We also have to support the patient's right to self-determination. Patients do have the ability to make their own choices after they've been informed. And then the book cautions us against avoiding ethical blindness. Sometimes the nurse and the patient can become so intertwined in a relationship that it's almost impossible for either one of them to see the ethical implications of the decisions that either one of them are making. So, how is this information relevant to clinical practice? It's relevant because the nurse can engage in a dynamic process of caring that contributes to patient-centered care and leads a patient to greater autonomy and self-determination. And patient-centered care is connected with more positive health care outcomes and greater patient satisfaction.